3 shots, the wrong guys, huge plays, and who we are. It's all the focus of tip-off next. Boom, boom, a little part of me died last night. Boom, 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 a split second more. Boom, 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 boom. I still can't really handle it. Boom, 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 boom. Broken. It's tip-off. How are you? Ah! I just want to cry about last night. I just want to cry about last night. I just want to cry about the little hopper that Paul Millsap missed in Atlanta for the game winner. I just want to cry about the tip-in against Sacramento. 3 shots that may turn out to define this season. 3 different shots that may determine and define the season. And if we think about it for a moment, all right, so that's the broken, emotional fan side of me. Trust me, sleep was not. Oh, just still crushed. I be interesting to see how these guys bounce back. This has just been an emotional run because the amount of big plays they made last night to answer, and then to have Nash answer them back. I mean, Jefferson's 19-foot jumper on the right side over Gortat. Millsap driving and scooping to Jefferson for the bucket where he's fouled and we don't get the call. Millsap's steal of Nash. That was huge on a switch, and he steals it from Nash, gets a breakaway foul, and then hits just one of the 2 free throws. After he'd hit 21 straight, by the way, up to that point. We would have traded any of the others probably. Just huge plays all night. The Channing Frye 3 that banks in with 1:06 left, that just can't be right. Oh, just a crusher. Yeah, I have this whole reasonable. I woke up this morning and having spent some time just stewing, I have this very reasonable analysis and take, and I barely can get to it. Oh, gosh, the Sacramento, the Atlanta, the Phoenix, and you're in a playoff run that's going to be determined by one game. You know it is. You know when this is done, unless we fall apart, that it's going to be determined by one game. And last night was enormous. Last night you win, and to some extent you knock Phoenix off. You have one more game with them. You at least had the chance to dictate that Phoenix was out of this thing. You could have won the season series. Now you've lost the season series to them. You're going to have to beat them completely. Denver and Houston still coming in regards to the playoff push. In a lot of ways, what we had going into last night, we had 4 teams battling for 3 spots. Dallas wins, so they kind of jumped back up. So then you had 3 teams battling for 2 spots in Houston, Denver, and Utah. By losing to Phoenix, you've now made it 4 teams battling for 2 spots, which makes things much more difficult because that Houston game on the 11th, a week from yesterday, is as big a game. And you used to be able to kind of say to yourself, well, if you win that game, you probably get the edge over Houston. Well, now you need the edge over Phoenix also, and you're short a game on Phoenix. The second to last game of the year, April 24th, home against Phoenix, for all we know, maybe enormous. New Orleans gets a huge win last night. New Orleans has got their guys back. They played Ariza, Landry, and Gordon. That's not going to be an easy game anymore. So anyway, just bummer. And bad starts to the first and third quarter. I didn't think Al was as good last night as he has been. His effort has been really fabulous, and last night it wasn't. All right, I'm going for it. I've just been stalling there to try to get to the reasonable part of this. To some extent, no, completely 100%. This is who we are. You know, we're not a team that's going to walk into any NBA game and blow somebody out unless there's an extenuating circumstance. We got the Clippers earlier this year on the back end of a bunch of things. I mean, Washington comes in and rolls over and dies, but we're not a team that's going to blow someone out. If I'm right, I believe we've now played either 18 or 19 of our 55 games have been decided by 5 or less. Think about that for a second. It's close to 33%. uh, of our games are being decided by 5 or less. I mean, we're just in every game with most teams, including a Sacramento or including a really good team, Miami, down to the wire, possession by possession, and there's no way you win all those games. In fact, I think we are probably, of those 18 games, we may be 9-9 now. That's pretty good, actually. That's how we've stayed above water. But we're not probably we've got a lot of fight and a lot of desire and a lot of heart. We don't have that guy that takes over a game. Paul was pretty darn good last night against Channing Frye, but most people can't be against Channing Frye. And we're playing close games every night. It's been great fun, but it's heartbreaking. And because that's what our talent level is. That's who we are. It takes a lot of effort for us to win games, which I think we're seeing also that it does take a lot of effort for us to win games, and so we may be fatiguing in this stretch of games. We're 2-5 since the 4 overtime games. Is that right? Um, Lost to Boston, Sacramento, Clippers, Phoenix. Yeah, 2-5. Uh, so I think, as much as we're frustrated and bummed out, and it's interesting the adjectives that come across my desk via Twitter or email. Disgusted, really? Like you're disgusted? I mean, broken, disappointed. Wish you won, but I don't have anything to be disgusted about. This team is not one that's going to go beat people by 20, and so you're into close games and you're battling late, and plays go your way or not. Let me try to address some other items, but I think that's by the way, I think that's the way you have to just view it. Close game against Portland, you got it. Tip in earlier this year by Jefferson, you got it. Last 2 tip ins, we didn't get it. Close game against Miami, you got it. And when you're playing possession by possession basketball every night, going down the wire, you just don't, you don't go 15-4. It just doesn't work that way. You do what we've done, which is go about 9-9. But gosh, 18, I think it is, of our 55 games decided by 5 or less. That's got to be. Portland's played an awful lot of close games, I know, this year, and they've lost a lot of them. That's the difference. The reason why Utah's ahead of Portland is because of the fact that we've done a better job in those close games than they have. The other night they collapsed and we got it. They're Channing Frye's 3 with 106 left. Are you kidding me? See, I kind of go back and forth with you today. There's just it the rational person in me says that's who we are, and that's what's been impressive about this season. Is take this angle for a second. Had had we had anything wrong this year, if we didn't put out the effort that we've put out, if Tyrone hadn't had a good grasp on who these guys are and create this, if the leadership of these guys wasn't that good, if the young guys hadn't come around, it could have gotten really ugly. I mean, that's, I think, what you also can see every night is here we are playing possession by possession. We're grabbing about half of them. Boy, if we had 1 or 2 things were off kilter this year, that's where we suddenly start losing a bunch of games and things fall apart, and thank goodness that hasn't happened. I'm not sure the scenario where we take a big jump, and hopefully that's next year. Hopefully that's Favors improves and gets some more time and a few moves to adjust this team. You're right where you want to be. I mean, there's no more meaningful minutes than that. Let me talk meaningful minutes for a second. I think this is really important. I was going to save this for tomorrow, but I'll do it today. So we've had this ongoing conversation about how important meaningful minutes are and playing games that can be won or lost. The worst possession of the night last night, that's hard to say. We had a few. But probably the worst possession of the night is a transition where Alec Burks pops over on the left side and jacks a 3 in transition. It's a terrible shot. One, Burks is about a 24% three-point shooter. Two, it's a long three, miss, goes the other way for two. It was everything that was wrong with a possession. And in many ways, it may have cost the team the game. I mean, you can isolate a single possession, but that's an overstatement. But it's part of the reason the team lost. Alec Burks then gets pulled from the game from that, and I think the lesson's pretty clear. You're playing on Washington or Sacramento or Golden State. You jack that shot, there's no ramifications. That singular play right there is why playing meaningful minutes, the catchphrase from Kevin O'Connor all year, is really, really important in a player's development. If Burks does that in Sacramento, Washington, Golden State, one of these other places, it doesn't cost them the game. It doesn't alter the outcome of the playoff race. It doesn't, there's no impact to it. He can have a coach who yells at him and says, hey, we don't like that shot, but so what? And he stays out on the floor. Last night, it's a pretty big impact on the game. You know Burks goes home as confident as he may be. He's got to be thinking about that possession, I hope. And he got taken out of the game. I mean, Alec Burks is incredibly talented. He slid to 12 in the draft because some people had his concern about his understanding of how to play possessions, how to play with teammates, shots like that one, frankly. And that is a great learning lesson to make him a better basketball player with a possession like that. That possession, to me, is exactly what this entire season is about. Alec Burks is a better player today because of it. Steve Nash was pretty fabulous. Gordon Hayward, 2010. And by the way, the Jazz defended the last two buckets by Nash fairly well. Jefferson defended really well on the fading back baseline shot, and the Jazz didn't want to let him split that double team, but he did. Nash was great on that. Hayward 2010 last night. His development is just terrific. Those are big time minutes. He's gaining incredible experience. He at times is still the best player on the floor, and he is putting his stamp on this team. Faves didn't play a great deal last night. I didn't think he was as good as he has been in some games. He kind of got early. Again, I think he probably learned a lesson. I didn't think he came as sharp early in that game. His numbers, he's just incredible. He puts up numbers. But he didn't, to me, he didn't come out as sharp as he should have, and he got a few hustle plays early he didn't get, and then Robin Lopez did a great job of pushing him off the block last night. Final few thoughts, and then I actually going to chime in on the Greg Williams story of the day. The game is, all right, for all of these other things, the game is lost when Steve Nash is out of the floor last night, off the floor last night. The Suns were plus 14 in the way I do it. Yahoo has them at plus 13, but I have them at plus 14. I mean, that is just really unusual on the back end of back-to-back that Steve Nash turns out to be minus 12. But you can't, if you're going to beat Phoenix, you have to beat their bench. Our bench didn't play well last night. Jamal Tinsley couldn't guard Sebastian Telfair. I didn't see anything on my Twitter handle talking about how Ty made the right move to go back to Earl Watson last night, which he blatantly did, despite all of the haranguing of the past. I mean, for all of you that are calling for Corbin's job every time that there's a substitution you don't like, you got to have some consistency in what you're saying. All right. You just can't pick one every night and then have it have no consistency to the next night. It's Bush League. It's being, I get it. It's emotion. I love it, but it's still just a little ridiculous. All right. In regards to the breaking news of the day, Mike Silver, who I've known for an awfully long time, got a great get of this documentary filmmaker who has the audio of Greg Williams' speech to the locker room before the 49er game where he basically offers a bounty on Alex Smith and says to take out Michael Crabtree's knee and talks about headshots. A few quick thoughts on this. First off, let's not act like we didn't believe this was going on in the NFL. The NFL is the most vilely brutal sport. These guys are out there trying to kill each other on every play. And so Greg Williams is not particularly different than what you probably would hear in a lot of other locker rooms. It is also, I think, worth noting culturally in the NFL that there's a problem. Okay, there's two different angles here. One is, well, this goes on in the game. Okay, that's right. It does go on the game. It's always been a part of the game, and it's really unhealthy. So just because it's gone on forever doesn't mean it's right. And no, we're not trying to turn the game into flag football. But you don't actually have to be targeting guys' heads or targeting guys' knees or and really what you're doing is dehumanizing the opponent to a point where you can and then treat them as such. I get it. But it's a cultural problem in the NFL. And yes, it has gone on for a long time, but it's not right. And it's not healthy going forward for two reasons. One, the game is too fast, too strong, too big, and players are getting seriously injured, long-term impact. Someone on the field is, as I've said numerous times, going to die unless they change this. And so on the field, some of this needs to be taken out of the game. You can still coach and play the game and have it not be flag football without this next step. The second thing is it should be no surprise to any of us that any man that sat in that locker room with that kind of speech going on, and I agree, I think it probably happened in 30 locker rooms, turns around and has a tremendous amount of arrests in the offseason with domestic violence, assault and battery, and everything else that the NFL has. It's crazy to ask someone in key moments to perform in that manner and then assimilate back. It's not quite as crazy what we do with our soldiers, but it's not that far off. And that's the other cultural issue of why the NFL has to change this. They are creating almost animals, I guess I would be saying. All right. Sounds like I'm having some interference on my feed, so that ends today's tip-off.